All right. Welcome, everybody. I think we should get started because we want to have as much time as possible for this wonderful forum today. So this is the third in a series, a three-part series of forums, actually, that was set up by Lisa Reisner here and Anne. And this deals with St. John's history, past, present, and future, our demographics in particular, that Jay led off with last week, and particularly the racial nature of the real estate history of the area that we live in and how that's affected even today. And Reverend Talbird today is going to continue that discussion of the demographics, modern day, current day, demographics for our neighborhood, and then talk about neighborhood from a theological perspective. So John, come on up and take it away. Okay, one housekeeping item. Please save all your questions until the end. And then we will come around with a microphone and ask you to use that so that we capture all of that. And so we will also be monitoring the chat and answering questions from there as well. All right?
Okay.
Take it away.
So that does. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for asking me to be a part of this. I think Lisa has done a great job in terms of organizing this, to put this with three different presentations, one of looking at sort of the historical context, and Jay last week looking really at the political context. Well, it's not working right now. They changed the mouse.
There we go. But I'm not sure what that is. That little thing that's coming out, because that's not coming from that guy. I don't know what that guy is.
It's moving it around.
Okay. Who is St. John's? That's probably a question most of us don't ask, but I'm sure it's one that the clergy and the leadership often ask of who St. John's is. My role today, as I see it, is to sort of put St. John's in the context of the neighborhood. When Robert Hartman's asked me to join the 150th anniversary, one of the first questions I asked was, why was St. John's put here? And I think that's where we have Cathy to thank for really putting that into a context. What she did was, in terms of taking St. John's all the way back to its beginning. The slide that she showed with St. John's on this little dirt road with nothing else around it. It was St. John's in the wilderness was when it was there. In a sense, though, it was St. John's on the forefront. They were a mission not just in terms of ecclesiastical understanding, but they were a mission to be able to allow people to go to church where they could not go all the way into Washington. So we've been here for 150 years, as Cathy took us through, and then as Jay took us through last week, the 150 years weren't just years one after another. It came in terms of a political and a social context, particularly having many racial overtones of what they were. So Bethesda is not the same place as it was 150 years ago, but neither or we? So, who are our neighbors? And the reason I think this is important as a church, I think one of the things that Jesus said is the greatest commandment is to love God and to love our neighbors. To love God and to love our neighbors. That's from the Torah and both in Exodus and in Leviticus. So, who are these neighbors? Interesting enough, these were shots just walking around one block. These are our closest neighbors. Thanks to the Episcopal Church website, they have done some marvelous work in terms of looking at every single church in the Episcopal Church. You can look at our own demographics of our church attendance, of our stewardship over the last 10 years, and our membership over the last 10 years. But they also now have added a whole demographic site to it, where you can look at the demographics of any area. So one of the interesting things they have just done after the last general convention is they've made it possible to be able to take a location and to look at that in terms of an area. So what I decided to do is I wanted to look at St. John's in a 1 mile radius. So sort of taking Maple Avenue at the northern end, and then going on around with Lindbergh Park, Connecticut at East-West Highway, and then Bradley at Brookville. And then All Saints down at Chevy Chase Circle is in the southeast, and then down at the south is Friendship Heights, Kenwood, Bradley on the other side, and then back up. So that's roughly a 1 mile radius all the way around St. John's. We are largely a white demographic, but that's not just who we are. You can look at and thanks to Lisa with these slides, she is the one who did all of the research and actually made these slides. I was trying to do that and it was a disaster, but she came to my rescue and did this. Yeah. So this is the racial makeup of our neighborhood, which you can see we're largely white, which I'm sure that was no surprise, but look at the number of Hispanic and Blacks who also live in here, and Asians. Those three areas are pretty large. Also, when we look at married or single, you know, I think sometimes in parishes that are out of the suburbs or out of the city, we all think of them as single homes with married couples and children in them. But look at this, of the number of people who are not married, the people who are divorced, widowed, separated. We have a large contingent of people who are not married. And the diversity of the families too. Married with couples, married with no children, which I would assume many of those are older couples whose children have gone off, single parents, non-families, which I assume means single people. And we are well educated. One of the things that Mary and I have found when we've moved here is everybody we have met are smarter than we are. We are so well educated. I meet with a couple of friends of mine, and I think between the two of them, They each have PhDs and then several master's degrees. So like I said, everybody I have met here is better educated than we are. But that's the demographics here in our surroundings. The schools are both public and private schools. When I started thinking about how I was going to put this together, I started riding around and I was sort of amazed at the number of schools that we have here. The one school that I don't have up here is Bethesda Elementary School. And the reason I don't have that is by the time I made that picture, I had already put together this slide and I was too lazy to go back and do it. You'll see our own Oneness School right at the middle. Was amazed at the number of private schools that were located with churches. Down in the lower left-hand corner is Somerset Elementary School, which is in this area. And then, of course, over east of us is the Chevy Chase Elementary School. And I was taking pictures of different churches and was in this large church parking lot and walked across the parking lot and thought, here is a football stadium right in the middle of Bethesda. What is this? And I realized that was Chevy Chase High School right there. So both public and private high school schools. And I'm dead again, Lisa. I have to be wound up periodically to keep going.
Yeah, except I'm the one that set it up badly, so. I'm not sure, but we can run it.
Okay. I'm glad to see experts have the same problem that those of us who are amateurs. So in preschool, you see the large number of private schools and public schools, more private schools in terms of preschool. Next one, Bill. Then K through 12, you see a much larger group of public schools to private schools, and then finally college. The next slide. And about half and half of the people who live here attend private colleges or public colleges, which is in my own family, we have that same, almost that same demographics as 3 of our children went to public colleges and 2 of our children went to private colleges. Okay, next one. So where do people live in this area? And that I found fascinating with, again, this was just sort of my concept of where St. John's was located. Single family houses is what I was expecting, but you look, there are many more. There are people who live in duplexes and townhouses around here. And then you start looking at the larger units of where people live until you get to the multi-units people live. Many of those, okay. These are single families right here. And then these are the duplex with townhouses. These are units of 2 to 4 units, 5 to 9 units, but the large are 10 plus units. You can simply walk down Bradley for a block and you begin to see where all of the 10 plus units are. Okay, Bill? And these are the places, some of the places. One of our closest neighbors takes up the largest amount of property in that 1 mile radius, which is the Chevy Chase Country Club. I was so intimidated by that. I couldn't find a way to take a picture of it. I finally went over and parked off of Connecticut Avenue and walked back. And I thought, you know, here is a guy with shorts and sandals on, carrying a camera, going into this private club and trying to take pictures. So that's as far as I would go. That's the tennis courts in there. I thought somebody is going to call the police. And so that's there. This is down south and west, Somerset. These are a large multi-unit apartments. I would assume either you own, these are upscale apartments that are near, close to Old Georgetown Road and Arlington. And then the house on the top right is an easy walking distance of here. Okay, Bill. And there are people who both own property and who rent property. So just a little over half, 60%, own their homes. The rest are renter occupied. Okay. It's an easy walk to all of those from right here. Okay. So what does it cost to rent in this area? The bottom is $1,500 to $2,500. That's 52%. Then you look at 22% of 2,500 or more, 1,000 to 1,500, 16%. And then you start looking at places that might be affordable. And very few places in this area that are affordable housing for rent. We are a wealthy community. As I said, our closest neighbor is the Chevy Chase Country Club. You can see where what the people's income is. 125,000 or more is 60%, 17%, 75,000 to 125. And then you start moving into the area where people are beginning to struggle to live. So even though we are a wealthy community, not everybody is wealthy here. Okay. Because not all share in this. I don't know how many people really understand this, and I think this was, I don't know if you were surprised by this when you pull this off. I was certainly surprised when I first looked at that, and I thought, wow, that's important information. Near poverty, 30% of the people in this area. Now imagine that. 30% of the people in this area are near poverty. If you think back to the income demographics and also the cost of living. Over 8% live below poverty. So that's the demographics in this area. Bill, next. As I drove around and I took pictures, one of the things that impressed me is the number of churches that are in this 1 mile radius. And so I start wondering, what are these people up to? What do they think about the neighborhood in which we live? I was fascinating, and at some point I want to go back there and meet the Church of Bethesda. I don't really know what that is, but I would be interested in knowing who they are. And yeah.
I want to tell you that one of the people that attended St. John's, Todd Harris, he was the pastor of the Church of Bethesda and ended up coming to the Episcopal Church. So he's been here and he's now an Episcopal priest. So.
Oh, okay. So the church in Bethesda is a feeder to the Episcopal Church. Okay. But I found that fascinating, and the number of these that have schools connected to them. Next slide. More churches. What are these people up to? What do they think about the neighborhood in which we all share? And notice we also have another Episcopal church in this 1 mile radius, just on the edge of it. But I love that sign outside of Our Lady of Lourdes, thinking of becoming Catholic. And obviously, these churches are open to more than just English-speaking people. Okay, Bill. So this is the neighborhood in which St. John's is. The Bethesda Pool, which is a gathering place, is within this area. I was amazed. When I first started taking pictures, I thought, okay, I'm going to take pictures of where people gather. And there are so many parks. There are 3 parks within walking distance of here. Next slide. I don't know where the pic, there they are. I think it's important that the Bethesda Fire Apartment, who is certainly part of the neighborhood and serves not just the neighborhood, but around here. Here is a funeral home. And again, easy walking distance. I don't know what the writing center is, but I'm fascinated with that. Would like to know more about that. And of course, we live in we're right here in the middle of a commercial area. Trying to put this into the context of theological understanding. I first started with the concept of who is our neighbor. If you remember in the Gospel of Luke, where the lawyer came up and asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? When he told him the great commandment was love God and love your neighbor, he says, who is my neighbor? What his question was really about is, who do I not have to care for? Is that what the question was about? Jesus never answered his question, as typical of Jesus. What Jesus did was turn the question around. And the story he told of the Good Samaritan was finally the neighbor is the one who sees and does something about people who are in need or trouble. So that's what a neighborhood is. And then I started thinking about when in the 12th chapter of Genesis, where God says to Abraham, Abraham, I want you to leave where you are. I know you have a lot. You have a big family. You've done well, but I want to leave where you are. And he made 3 promises. He says, you will have many descendants, you will have a good name, and you will be a blessing to others. So the St. John's has many members and a good name. So to me, the theological question is, how can we be a blessing to the neighborhood? Because in some sense, I think that's why we exist, is to be a blessing here. Not just a part of the neighborhood, but we have a role to play as part of that. So that's where I would like to open it up to discussion now. I'm not quite sure how this works in terms of people online, but people here, if you'll hold up your hand, I think Robert will take you a microphone where you can speak.
And Bill will monitor. And Bill will monitor the chat. If you want to ask a question, you can put it in the chat or just raise your hand and Bill will call on you. Any questions?
I just want to go back to the data about the large percentage of people who are near the poverty line here, and I don't know how that's defined. Can you tell us how near the poverty line is defined?
Lisa, can you take the mic and answer that in terms of your understanding of that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I missed, I was talking. Yeah, so the statistics from that were used in the presentation, they all came from the Episcopal Church website, and it relied on a national, and I'm blanking on it, but I can send out the data, a national association of religious institutions that compiled all the data. And so it's a national definition of poverty, not the local definition of poverty, which is actually a higher number. So if we applied that number, I think the stats would even be higher for our immediate area. So, and I'm also happy to send out the data. It's really, you can get to it, as John was saying, you can get to it on the Episcopal Church website, the Mother Church website, but you can only get to it in certain ways. So you have to dig down and get actually the source data and then start manipulating that to be able to come up with the slides that we did. So
The way that Andy asked, what is the first thing you click on to get that? Like Lisa said, they don't make it easy for you to find. What I did is when you pull up the Episcopal Church website, then there is a blank that has questions. I put in demographics, and then it will take you to all sorts of different things. But what you're looking for are the demographics of the parish studies, where it will, and you can look at St. John's demographics there also in terms of our own attendance, our membership, and our giving over the last 10 years.
yeah, and also if you type in neighborhood, they
Yeah.
have a whole page dedicated to what is my neighborhood, and you can type in a location or a parish and it will pop up. And then you can start sort of clicking through and you get a actually very sophisticated layered map that's quite hard to manipulate. It's very new.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we can send out links to it for those that are interested, and also the data that we downloaded. So.
I'm Barbara Ordway, and I was part of the team that spent time on the Neighbor to Neighbor project, which was shortly before COVID. And we made a map of neighborhoods around here of parishioners. And so you can go, there's a Google Doc that we can make more widely available that mapped every person to a neighborhood here and put it in the directory. So if you go in the St. John's directory and you look for neighborhoods, you will find Potomac, East Bethesda is the largest because that's from East West Highway to Jones Bridge Road, east of Wisconsin Avenue. And there are more parishioners there than anywhere, but there are parishioners all the way to Potomac and people from Virginia as well. So you can look up your neighborhood and who else in St. John's was here, but that's as of probably 5 years ago.
Barbara, I don't know if you remember this, but one of my own questions, I was thinking, I wonder if how many people live within that 1 mile radius. I only know one person who lives. Don't you live? Wouldn't you say you live within 1 mile radius of that? Yeah.
You're cut off with to the north, east, west highway, and to the east, Brookville Road.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so. And you may live,
on the edge.
yeah, and you may live close to the edge of it. Yeah, how many people live within that? Wow. That's incredible. Good, thank you.
Questions?
Another one, okay.
Carolyn Pierce, and this is not a question, just an observation, following up on Liz's comment about the near poverty level. 30%, if I have the number correct in my memory, and then below the poverty level. That was so revealing to me and surprising. Work we've done with people, food programs and so forth. I always think of that as the eastern part of Montgomery County. And it's right here. We've got here as well. I mean, I know Bethesda Cares has been serving that community for a long time, but I don't know if it surprised others, but that was one of the statistics that surprised me the most. And thank you, John, for pulling us together, and Lisa.
Yeah, Carolyn, I must say, what Lisa and I did today would simply be some interesting demographics. Were it not for what Cathy and Jay did to really put this into a historical context, which I think makes it even more significant to look at where we are today in light of that. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Margaret Hilton, and I just was thinking about some ways I think we are already blessing, and it might not be the immediate neighborhood, but somewhat. I was talking to Denise just the other day because I was working on an Outreach Sunday blurb about Bethesda Cares, and I think if we can broaden our definition of who we're trying to help, I understand the main focus is the Clarksburg Closet, and that some of the clothing is going to new migrants and so forth. So I think that's great. And also some of the clothing is still going to Bethesda Cares, which serves our very immediate neighborhood. So anyway, I think we're doing a lot of good work already. I guess that's all I would say.
Margaret, I think that's an excellent point. I think most churches, when they look at themselves, think, oh my God, we've got to do more. I think it's good to look at, in many ways, we already are a blessing. That the question doesn't mean what else do we have to do? It's looking at what we do and how we do impact the neighborhood. One of the questions I always have about parishes to ask this is, suppose you weren't here.
Yeah.
what would be missing? Would anything be missing? Yeah.
Well, and I'll also say that when I take data at Nourishing Bethesda, I definitely find people who live in my own zip code, which is close to Suburban Hospital, 20817. So it is right here in our neighborhood, and we're helping them with food with Nourishing Bethesda.
Yeah.
I'm Janet Hall. John, thank you for that. I am curious as to how you theologically think about the expansion of the term neighbor, because I know obviously Jesus's exhortation is our view of neighbor is much broader than just this radius. And I think this church has a lot of interest in supporting our neighbors, even in other parts of the world. How would you grapple, if you were a member of the vestry, as several of us are, with the prioritization of the definition of neighbor? Because that is something that I think all of us are dealing with at various levels right now. And I'm really curious to hear what you think about that theologically.
Oh, wow. Good question. This may not be a direct answer. Maybe I should try to be like Jesus and ask you a question. But I remember at Good Shepherd, where I was before I retired, the question came up for our outreach committee about people applying for funds from that. And I think the criteria that we finally came up with is saying our money will follow our people's feet. In other words, we would help support things that people were actively involved in. And that was a way of connecting to the neighborhood, as opposed to just saying, well, we are a grant agency, and looking at whether, there is no shortage of needs in the world, but it's where the neighbor is the one who sees and who acts. So it's where we see and act, and it may be in another part of the world, or it may be a block away.
More questions? Bill, is there anything on the online folks?
Quiet online audience. It's not silent.
I put them to sleep on Sunday morning.
Langdon Healy. I, as well as many people in the room, have been involved with Nourishing Bethesda from its inception. One of the things that I think is important about Nourishing Bethesda and St. John's, thank you to John Ross and many others, Lisa, for getting it going. But there's two aspects to neighbors about that I think are important. One is that we've had the view at Nourishing Bethesda from the very beginning. I think that our neighbor is not just somebody that has a bed within 1 mile or 2 or 3 miles from here, but it's somebody who's actually here frequently, meaning people that work here. And the demographics of the people that work here. And if you walk these streets from 8 to 5 or 6 p.m., when a lot of people that are not sleeping here or off at offices or whatnot, the predominant language on the streets, the neighborhoods, is Spanish. So our neighbor is somebody who we bump into if you happen to be walking the streets. And I will frequently say a quick chit chat in broken Spanish. But anyway, the point is that our neighbor is somebody that you come across.
Yes.
And I think St. John's has taken that pretty seriously in terms of our connection to Nourishing Bethesda.
Yeah.
The second point about Nourishing Bethesda is that from the very beginning, there's been a theology, I would say, of building community among the volunteers. And I think we're really it's not much discussed about Nourishing Bethesda, but I think that's maybe a more important part of what we're doing than just the food.
Thank you, Langdon. I couldn't agree with you more. When we would take different groups to Haiti, it developed a community. As a matter of fact, I think it got to be a point of contention in the parish that some of the people who couldn't go started talking about the Haiti Club. And I think as Nourishing Bethesda continues to grow, I think it's the way you develop a community within a community. When I was chaplain at the University of Florida, that one of the things that I said to incoming students is I said, Florida at that point was massive, which it's much larger now. 40,000 students is nothing now, but I said, you can't be a member of 40,000 people, but the way you get here is you join a fraternity, sorority, religious organization. You work on the Alligator, the newspaper. That's the way you become a part, and you do develop community. So I think you're absolutely right. That may be even more important than what is done.
I'm Ann Dursey, and I wanted to thank Langdon for what he said for two reasons. When people are part of the community and working, serving at Nourishing Bethesda, it's an important source of spiritual growth and development as disciples of Christ. And that's one of the big reasons. Helping people, certainly helping hungry people, that's a great thing too. But this opportunity to grow as a disciple through the service that Jesus asks us to do is extremely important to our inner transformation and our inner spirituality. And the second thing I'd like to say is we have also always welcomed volunteers from the broader community. So our community here at St. John's is reaching out and connecting in a really serious way. The Op Shop does this too, I have to say, with people from around our community. And we're demonstrating what we believe as Christians by what we do, right? It's by our actions. So that's really important. And the third thing I would mention is we've also taken the attitude at Nourishing Bethesda that our approach is not top down. We're people with food. We're giving food to people who don't have food. It's no one thrives unless everyone thrives. And that's the reason we're there, because we are truly neighbors. We're truly all part of the same community, that garment of destiny that Martin Luther King talks about. So it's a deeply spiritual experience to serve at Nourishing Bethesda. And pardon me? Very interfaith, absolutely, right. We have so many different traditions, faith traditions and denominations who participate with us. So I want to invite everyone, if you haven't tried it yet, we have two opportunities set up for the parish to do, one day at Nourishing Bethesda, one evening, 2 days in October, in conjunction with our town hall on food insecurity, which is coming up next Sunday from 1 to 3. I hope everyone will come because it's a big issue in our neighborhood. Yes, sorry, Nan.
So just as somebody who's in charge of packing nights, I'm Nancy Adams. As somebody who's in charge of packing nights, I can tell you that it is an incredibly uplifting experience to be with all these people packing food. Everybody has a great time. In fact, there are times now where the regular packers who've been coming for 3 years are told not to come so we can have another group, and they hate it. They want to be there. They're like, this is what I do, So I would again encourage you to join in that. It's a wonderful experience. We got great music going. We got people. It's very well organized, and please join us.
I'm a volunteer at Nourishing Bethesda, Allison Jones. And I've been doing it for about 6 months. I'm new to the community, and I would like to say that getting to know the clients and who they are is so important. And as someone mentioned, it's not top down. Everyone's very welcoming. But to me, what's interesting, I guess, as a retired social worker also, is to see who the poor are in our community. They don't necessarily look poor. You would not know. In Memphis, where I lived for 50 years, I know who the poor are and what they look like, and often you can tell by looking. But here it's so different because it's a real mix of ethnicities and backgrounds, and so it's been an interesting experience for me to recognize that you don't necessarily know who the poor are in your community.
So John, I wanted to ask you a question. You're a pastor for so many years. I know you've been retired now for a little bit, but what drew you to this particular piece? What is it that you feel from your kind of experience as a parish priest and now very much connected and you believe in St. John's? There's something about this place that you've invested in and you want good for this community of faith. What is it about knowing this information that you feel is important for a church to know, and why? So.
Thank you, Sari. Wonderful question. I think the thing that draws me to St. John's is St. John's has a question about who we are and why do we exist. And it's not just for itself. To me, the church is called to reach beyond itself. Jesus sent out disciples and told them to go out there. Don't take extra clothes, don't take extra money. Depend upon the hospitality of the people you find. Depend upon the hospitality of your neighbors. And to me, St. John's has a core of worship, but the core worship is to send people out. And that's what attracts me to St. John's, as well as this is long before your time at Virginia Seminary, but up over the altar, which we saw every day in morning prayer for 3 years, was go into the world.
Thank you, John. That really was just a lovely way to cap off this three session series. And thank you, Jay and Cathy. I hope you're home listening to us. It really gives us a lot of food for thought as we move forward through this year and our 150th and sort of discerning exactly what John was talking about. So many thanks, John.
And I thank you for letting me to be a part of this wonderful parish.
All right. Well, I've got you captive here for a few minutes before the service begins. I just wanted to quickly bring to your attention some of the more other exciting things that are going to be going on in a part of the 150th. We do have some more events scheduled for October, and I've talked about some of them, but the one that I really want you to know the most about today, of course, is the Finding Common Ground Town Hall series, which begins on the 22nd. It will be in this room. It will be from 1 to 3, which is an unusual and new different time. So we want people to get used to that. And to help you make that transition, we're going to be serving a light lunch so that you can stay after this 11 15 service and have a light lunch and then participate in the town hall. The first town hall, there's a flyer that we handed out today. If you don't have it, please get one on the way out or we'll hand you one. This one is on the root causes of food insecurity. How germane is that after our conversation about Nourishing Bethesda just now? And there will be a great panel of experts on the 22nd. John Ross, of course, will be part of that. Ann Dursey will be moderating it. But you have some really high-level officials from Montgomery County and food insecurity experts that I think will be very enlightening. And now you even have a background of more questions to ask them, I think, based on some of the demographics that you learned about today. So I think it should be a very exciting town hall. The first of 6 town halls, which Lisa and Ann put together, and that are going to be occurring throughout the year on very interesting topics. And there's a major article in Crossroads that I refer you to on that whole town hall series. So take a look at that. The other events that are happening in October are related to learning more about the Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, right? And on Friday, the 27th, we're going to have a movie night for families and their kids, and it's all going to show Coco, the movie, the Disney classic, which many Mexican people believe is a fantastic representation of the Day of the Dead. And so come and enjoy the movie and learn about it. And then as an extension of that, on the following Sunday, Anne Ramsey Moore and Walter Smith and the Muertos family will be presenting a forum right here at 10 o'clock on Halloween, All Saints, All Souls, Day of the Dead. What do they have in common? What's different? How are they celebrated differently? And as a part of that, after we have a little it's sort of a learning session, we'll break into workshops. We'll have face painting, everyone to learn how to become looking like a skull before you actually become looking like a skull. You can actually do that. We'll have some pan de muertos, which is the famous bread of the day for that Day of the Dead. And we'll learn how to make the paper flowers that are used. We'll have an ofrenda, which is like an altar. We encourage you to bring your photos of your departed ancestors to bring for that altar, as they do in Mexico, and be a part of that whole thing. One other thing before you go, and that is that on the calendar, which there are many more up here to take with you along with buttons, it does say that on Saturday, November 18th, that the Gay Men's Chorus, it says to be confirmed. Well, it is very much confirmed. And we want to make that clear. And we'll have 2 ensembles from the Gay Men's Chorus coming, Aspects of Love and Potomac Fever. And they're both terrific groups. And so it will be in the sanctuary. It is free for you to come. We just ask that people sign up, and you'll be hearing more about that. So we just want to make sure we have enough room for everybody. But do come for that. That's going to be 2 45-minute sets with an intermission in between. Great date night for that Saturday night. So please plan on coming. Yes, Janet. And Janet, you want to talk about that?
Next Sunday's forum is the budget presentation by the vestry, and I think it would be useful for as many people as possible to attend or watch online. It's always helpful, I think, for parishioners to understand what our challenges are, what our opportunities are, and what our blessings are.
Last but not least, I forgot to mention that these town halls are so incredibly important and thoughtful, and such work has gone into them that each one of them is spawning its own issue of the Due Justice newsletter devoted to that particular topic, and an in perspective paper, which is something new you haven't seen yet, but it's a whole new issue paper that puts down in print everything that that they're going to be talking about and more. So really, we encourage everyone to come to and bring your neighborhood, bring your neighbors and your friends to this town hall series. Thank you.